Welcome back! Today we are diving deep into one of Canon's latest long-range zoom lenses, the Canon RF 200-800 f6.3 to f9 IS USM lens. This lens has been making waves since its announcement, especially for those interested in wildlife, event and astrophotography. And for me, this is one of my very first ultra telephoto lenses that I've bought mostly for wildlife, but I recently started to take some astro shots of the moon as well, and I definitely need to say that this lens is pretty impressive. It features a crazy zoom range and it's one of the most accessible super telephoto options on the RF mount for around €2,500, which is not cheap for sure, but still a great price for such a lens. In this video we will cover all kind of things from the build quality and ergonomics, image quality and autofocus performance, to who this lens is truly for and whether it's worth the investment. So if you're ready to see what this 200-800mm lens has to offer, let's jump right in. And first let's start with a quick overview of what makes the Canon RF 200-800 so special. Canon introduced this lens as part of its RF lineup to provide photographers with an affordable way to reach extreme focal length on the RF mount, designed specifically for their mirrorless cameras. With this lens you can go from a relative close 200mm all the way to 800mm, offering incredible reach for those who need it. That kind of range is ideal for wildlife photographers capturing distant animals, sport photographers covering events from the sidelines, and even astro enthusiasts wanting to photograph the moon. One of the major highlights of this lens is that it packs this long reach into a compact and lightweight design compared to traditional super telephoto primes, which are often large, heavy and well, pretty expensive. For sure this one is still not a small lens, but if you are into wildlife photography you will know that lenses in this category aren't that small. So the question is this the ultimate super telephoto lens for the Canon RF system? Let's break it down. As you would expect a lens designed for reaching this focal length, the Canon RF 200-800 is on the larger side, but it's surprisingly compact for what it offers. Canon's design team has done a great job keeping this lens lightweight with around 2000 grams. Construction-wise, Canon has kept it durable but lightweight by using a mix of high-quality materials. And yes, this lens feels solid. It also has a dust and drip resistant construction, which is essential if you're shooting in unpredictable weather or dusty environments. On top, the zoom is also smooth and nice, which makes transitioning through the focal range easy and controlled. Unlike internal zooms, it does extend when zooming, so it's not as compact as prime lenses, but it's well balanced, which makes it a lot easier to handle than some larger telephoto lenses. On top you can also see a switch for the AF control or MF and a stabilizer switch. Typically for the RF lenses is also the customizable control ring, which means you can easily adjust settings on the go. On top there's also an additional ring that you can use to adjust the zoom ring and additional buttons that you can set up in your camera. So in terms of design and usability, Canon has done a fantastic job making this lens intuitive and accessible for all kind of shooters. But what I personally don't really like is the missing focus ring. In this case you have to use the switch to decide if you want to adjust the focus with the control ring or your ISO, aperture and so on. But yeah, still overall the build quality of this lens is absolutely great. But now let's move on and let's talk about the most important part. Image quality. Does a Canon R5 200-800 actually deliver sharpness and clarity you need for those extreme focal lengths? Well, the short answer is yes. It holds up pretty well, especially for a zoom that reaches all the way to 800mm. The lens provides good sharpness throughout the zoom range and I never had any issues to get some great shots. Wide open at 6.3 to f9, depending on the zoom, the images are sharp and you won't have any issues to get great results. Overall, I definitely need to say that the image quality on the RF 200-800 is more than solid. One of the downsides of this lens is for sure its aperture range. It starts at f6.3 at 200mm and narrows to f9 at 800mm. Now for sure this is a slower aperture than some other lenses and it's definitely something to keep in mind, especially if you're planning to shoot in lower light or with faster shutter speed settings. If you're out there in good lighting conditions like bright sunlight or well-lit outdoor events, the f6.3 to f9 aperture won't be a huge problem at all. But for sure light and ISO are your best friends, especially in dimmer environments or early morning or late evening shoots. So you don't be afraid to increase your ISO or use a slower shutter speed if it is possible to get a properly exposed shot. But lately in the post-production the noise reduction is top-notch, so that shouldn't be a huge problem in a lot of cases. Fortunately the built-in IS definitely helps to keep your images steady, especially when you're maxed out at 800mm. So even though the aperture is on the slower side, the stabilization is absolutely great, allowing you to still get sharp shots in lower light. But what's about the autofocus? This one is key when you're shooting distant or fast-moving subjects. And Canon equipped the RF 200-800 with their USM system. The autofocus is silent, which is great for wildlife photography when you don't want to disturb your subject, and it's smooth enough for videography as well. If you're pairing this lens with Canon's newer buddies like the Canon EOS R5 or R6, the autofocus performance gets a nice boost with features like eye detection or animal detection. And yes, this makes tracking moving subjects a lot easier. Even at 800mm the autofocus stays fast and accurate. Alright, but what's about video? A quick note here, I don't really use it for video, but for all the videographers watching, the Canon RF 200-800 actually has a lot to offer for long-range video capture. First on the built-in IS is a huge plus, especially when you're zoomed all the way in. Hand-holding at 800 is always going to be a challenge, but the stabilization really helps to make handheld shots easier. So yeah, with a tripod or monopod you will get smooth and stable footage, and that's great for capturing wildlife, sports or even distant landscape details. The only downside here again is the slower aperture. If you're shooting video in low light, you may find yourself needing to crank up the ISO, which can add more noise. But in well-lit outdoor settings, the RF 200-800 performs great, and it gives you a lot of creative flexibility for zooming in on distant subjects. But yeah, so who is the Canon RF 200-800 really for? Well, this lens is a fantastic option for photographers who need a long reach but don't want to invest in a super expensive prime lens. So wildlife photographers, birdwatchers and even sport enthusiasts will find this lens an excellent tool for capturing distant subjects. It's also a great choice for hobbyists who might not want to spend several $1000s on a dedicated super telephoto lens but still want access to those longer focal length. If you're planning to travel or shoot in various locations where you might need extra reach, the compact design of this lens makes it a lot easier to carry than some other lenses out there. However, this lens is still not a small lens. So the final question is, should you buy the Canon RF 200-800 f6.3 to f9? Well, if you're looking for a long-range, affordable super telephoto zoom lens on the RF mount, I would say this is a solid choice. It features everything you need to take some great wildlife shots or even some shots of the moon, so definitely give it a try. But what do you think about the RF 200-800? Let me know that in the comments. So, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're new here, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to stay updated for upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next video.